Okay. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm told we're now live on Facebook, so I'd like to welcome all of you that are joining us now and are on time. We could give a few more minutes to those that are still joining in, but that'll just take time from those of you that stuck to the appointment time. So we'll just get straight into it. I'm sure you're all familiar with the program or the live chat that we're getting into now, which is our On the Money live chat series. And today's guest needs no introduction. And if you've been following the financial inclusion space, if you're following financial literacy, you would know her. And she's smiling for you today. So I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to be having. Today, we're going to be discussing the secret of the leopard. Now, for those of you that have been following the financial literacy programs that we've been running, I'm sure you know that the secret of the leopard is quite a simple one. I mean, the idea basically is for you to learn how to save. That's basically pretty much what the leopard is teaching us about. And then at the same time, it also teaches us to be realistic in the saving. The leopard always aims for things it knows it can get. So when it's young, it targets and stalks small and easier targets. But as it grows older and becomes more experienced, it begins to target bigger animals. And this is what we're going to be discussing today with Kudzai, who is our guest. Kudzai, I'd like to welcome you to our On the Money program. I've not had you on this program before, but I know there's a lot of work that you're doing around financial literacy and financial education. So I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself now for our viewers that have joined in today. Briefly, how would you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. Sure. Thank you very much, Patrick. And let me say also a big thank you to Old Mutual for having me on the program. I was smiling more when you were saying that I'm smiling, because I think for me, smiling is on brand. I believe that in life, three things are very important: your health, your wealth, and happiness. And all of these things are made possible when we manage money well, which is what On the Money program is really about. After all's been said and done, managing money is much, much more important than making it. So I am Kudzai. Kudzai Mubaiwa is my name. And I think for those that have interacted with me before, you would know that I am a personal finance enthusiast. Some call me that. Some other people have referred to me as the head mistress of money. I have no idea where that came from, but I know that some of the folks I interact with call me that for some reason. But I like to describe myself as a financial literacy evangelist, because I'm a big believer that we have an important message. It is important that people understand how to make money, but it's also equally important that they understand how to manage money. And so programs like this, On the Money, really do help us from the big 5 secrets of money management to learn from the big 5 animals that are found in Africa, from their traits, like you've already begun to describe, how best we can manage money. So the work I do, or perhaps the background I have to start with, is that I am a banker by profession. So I always like to say that I studied at the best university in the country, which is the National University of Science and Technology. So a big shout out to people who went to that big school. And I spent quite a number of years within banking, working for several financial institutions in spaces like asset management, in corporate finance, in stockbroking. And eventually I branched out to do the work I do now, which is basically financial education. I also do digital stuff, but I think I spend a lot of my time doing things that have to do with financial wellness. I would say that in a nutshell, that describes what I do. Very keen on talking about all things money. And one of my passion projects is a podcast called Money. But more on that later, I suppose.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that introduction. I think it lays the foundation well for what we're going to be discussing. Now, a bit of a disclaimer here. Normally when we've got a talk show host, or in our case, the live show host, and then the guest that's coming on, I'm going to be asking difficult questions, and then the guest normally breaks it down and simplifies it for the audience. But today I'm going to ask you really simple questions, and I need you to complicate the responses so that the audience can get the what I'm going to be saying. Because the questions that I have are very basic, that the audience are going to relate to. But I need you to put depth into your responses so that they can take a lot out of today's conversation. Like I said, we're going to be discussing the secrets of the leopard. But as an introduction, how do you understand, or how would you define life events and the impact that they have on your finances? Because there's a lot that takes place. We're going through a COVID pandemic now, and there's a lot that's going on in people's lives, but they just continue to live. And there are certain life events that then transpire during the course of that time. And how do you think they impact on people's finances?
So yes, I think, absolutely, we are living in, and it's been a year for most people across the world who have been in shutdowns or lockdowns and basically been through the most difficult season of their lives ever since. And I think one of the things I find over the years is that when we would think about life, people would talk about different events that happen. So what people may call in course the natural progression is that you are born, you grow, you go to school, and if you follow the very typical path, you are going to find a partner, you may get married, possibly you may be blessed with children. And then what then happens after that is that you grow those children, you start to make a plan for yourself for your retirement, and then eventually you retire, and all things being equal, you enjoy life with the wife or the husband of your youth and enjoy the grandchildren, and you are done. But we know that in the course of life, there are a whole lot of things that you will need to do. You need to acquire assets, you need to take children to school, and possibly some negative things may happen as well. You may be in an accident, you may fall ill, you may become disabled, or a significant other may die. And all of these are things that just happen in the path of life. So without a doubt, every path or every step in life will require money, whether good or bad, money will be required. And so I think in the context of where we are now, the one thing I know personally, and I used to be an investment analyst, I never took account of, was living through a pandemic. So conversations of this nature, Patrick, are extremely important because we do need to relook how we can reorder our lives after having gone through such a thing. Now, I would say the first thing I would want to think about there, or perhaps speak to, is the fact that the secret of the leopard, in my view, can actually be summed up as having a plan. You need to have a plan for life. So like you said, there's saving, yes, but do we just save, Nje? The secret of the lion deep dives on saving, but the secret of the leopard now looks more around, okay, how do I plan my life such that I can have enough money to treat positive as well as negative events? I would say that that's my first response. I'm doing my best not to be too complex here because I also feel that things to do with money must be made as simple as possible. So let's see how we go.
In the words of a certain radio DJ, I'll be saying, go deeper into it. Okay, but anyway. Now, I just want to personalize it a bit. How have you, planned for the different stages and the goals that you have set in your life financially? I'm sure that you've got different goals that you've been setting in your life and the different life stages that you personally have gone through. How have you been planning for them financially?
Absolutely. So I would want to say that, to be fair, I think I did have some form of privilege. For most people who have studied commerce, you have some idea or inkling of how things should move. But it's also very interesting, and I always say this, that for a nation that is touted as being literate, we still have a lot of work to do in terms of converting our literacy, our basic general literacy, our ability to read and write. We now must convert that to financial literacy, and that's an important thing we need to do in life. Now, I would be honest and say that I think for me the journey has been continuous. Starting from how I was raised, because many of the things we do with money, perhaps we'll talk to this later, have a lot to do with our backgrounds. How were we raised? How did we see our parents perhaps manage money, or whoever was raising us? I would say that my foundation was pretty, fairly good, because I had a mother who taught me from a very early stage to always plan on how I use my money. So we were always taught how to create a very basic budget. I went to boarding at a mission school. My parents were both teachers, so on a civil servant salary, really you couldn't be buying lemon creams all of the time. And so you'd be told how much is available, you'd need to plan for it. So that gave me a really great foundation. But when you grow up as an adult, you begin to see how much of a soft landing you were being given by your folks. And so at some point, even though I'd studied commerce, I needed to come to a point where I say, I need to learn the basics of managing money. So for events in my life, I would say that the basics of managing money have really helped me in terms of planning for events. You did make some inference around saving when we started. I think that has been a very important factor in life, to just say one needs to train themselves not to spend or consume everything that they make. Because the thing is, no one is coming to rescue you. When those life events we spoke about come through, and I've been through different life situations myself, going through school, getting married, the birth of children, all of those things cost money. I've lost relatives, I've taken care of sick relatives, and each time you go to the hospital, you're either buying something special for the person who's ill to eat, or you will find a prescription waiting for you. And these are life things we come through. I find that just having a soft landing, having some form of saving helps. And I'd say in a pandemic situation like this, I realized that for people who have done reasonably well over this past period, and because I personally also could not do some of the work I used to do because it was shut down because of the pandemic, just having some saving, no matter how small, having an emergency fund of some sort gave me a very soft landing. Second thing in response on how I have managed some life events has been to make use of products and services that give me a soft landing. So you fall ill, having medical aid, it may not do everything, but it is better than having nothing. If you get into an accident, and I've experienced that with a vehicle, having insurance for my vehicle made a great difference because you can't just fork out $200 at short notice from pocket. And so those are things that really, really make a great difference in this life. That's how I've managed events so far, Patrick, making sure that I have some form of saving, making sure that I have some form of a soft landing in the form of products. And I think one must just be intentional about these things because in life, events will always happen, good or bad.
Okay, thank you for that. Just so you know, if you see me glancing and looking down, I'm actually just looking at my phone just to see what the comments are coming up on Facebook. I know our viewers might also just be looking at me and thinking maybe I'm shy to look at you in the camera. It's not the case. And I'm noticing that there's a gentleman called Terence, and he's saying on Facebook to say, if you don't have a plan, every path leads you nowhere. If you don't have a plan financially or otherwise, every path is just going to lead you nowhere. But he then goes on to ask a question and he says, do you have an emergency fund? And how did you come up with the amount that you used in that fund?
Okay, so there's actually a standard. The short answer is yes, I do. And the standard around emergency funds is that you must have at a minimum 3 times your monthly expenses as a cover. So for those that like to be technical, because you said I must try and make things deep, if you want to sound fancy and look different from people who did not attend this event, you say I have 3x, okay? So 3 times cover. Up to about 6 times. If you can do way more than that, then that's good. But anything between 3 and 6 months cover is a really great cover. Now, for those of us who are listening and who may listen to this as a recording later on, I want you to just pause and think about how much you need per month. If your figure lands on, say, the equivalent of, say, 500 United States dollars, we are basically saying you need to work overtime to make sure that you have at the very least $1,500 some way, okay? Such that if you were to lose a job, if you were to lose a breadwinner, if you were to be disabled in such a way that you're not able to work, or if any calamity would fall upon you, and because I know there are young listeners, if the aliens were to come, I don't know, anything really, you want to make sure that you are covered, for at least 3 times. Why 3? They say that generally, over a period of a quarter, that is perhaps sufficient time for someone to react, respond, and hopefully be starting on something new or a new trajectory that helps them to develop income in a new way. So it's important to have some form of an emergency fund. Very, very important. And there are several ways of how you can then house that particular fund such that it is ready and available in the day of trouble.
Okay. Thanks a lot for that. Terence is actually going deeper now in the questioning. And he then goes on to say, in what form of assets do you have your emergency fund? Is it cash? Are you keeping it in assets that you can easily liquidate? How are you keeping this emergency fund?
Okay, this is very interesting because I'm trying to figure out where the line is between what is personal and what's not. But let me say, as someone who has worked with different people and managed some funds, that it really works well if you are able to put your emergency fund in what we call cash and near cash. Because when an emergency occurs, you will not have time to sell a house. And so in as much as investing is very important, saving is important, yes, and then investing is also equally important, putting your money in a place where it can grow. For emergency funds, those funds should be housed in a product or in a service that we call cash, actual cash, or in near cash, which means something you can easily convert. So let me tell you something, or a product that easily comes to mind is unit trusts, right? And those are products which I know that Old Mutual does offer, and these can be, products that have different underlying assets. There could be property, there could be shares underneath, or a fixed income something, or alternative investments. But suffice to say, it's fairly easy to liquidate unit trusts because you can call whoever is managing your investment advisor, call them today, and you can, within the space of a week, if not slightly less, have access to funds. So you can be able to respond to an emergency in some way. So the short story is basically that for emergency funds, you want to make sure that it is in cash and near cash. It must be accessible. And then for different other life events, those can be covered by medium-term products, long-term products that match what exactly it is you are making preparation for. But I do like the point he raises when he says, I think it's Terence, where you say, Terence, that it is important to have a plan. I always like to say, when I take financial literacy classes, that if you aim at nothing, you will surely hit it. You are guaranteed that if your plan is to do and to have nothing, definitely by the end of the year, you will have nothing. And so the beauty with money conversations is we can be specific. You can literally do the math, like I gave you as an example. I am using $100 every month. If I want to have 6 months cover, then I must target to get to 600. Do I need to do that in a day? No, I can be able to build that up perhaps over 12 months, perhaps over 18 months, and I'll be in a great place.
Well, he's commenting here again just so that you have earned his respect, and now he wants to find a way that he can actually amplify your voice and get the word on financial literacy out. But moving on with the questioning, when it comes to financial literacy, what's your take on how it impacts, our reactions to the different life events? By the way, you do not need to answer in your personal what you have gone through as an individual. Just feel free to generalize. So I'm saying, when it comes to aspects of financial literacy, how do you think that it impacts our reaction to these different life stages? When you want to buy a car, your first house, marriage, children, what level of financial literacy does one need to have, and how does that impact how they then make these decisions?
I think financial literacy is a journey, and the beauty with it is that we pay fees as we go, and the more you refuse to learn, the more you pay fees, and sometimes the later you pay fees in life. One thing I also love about financial literacy is that you don't necessarily need to have a formal certificate. There are no entry requirements. You will not be asked for 5 O-levels, maths and English included, grade C or better, preferably one sitting. All you need to do is just to learn the very basic simples that are taught. And I know I like to make reference to the On the Money animals because they basically just cover all of the basics. So you want to be able to know how to save. You want to be able to know how to invest. You want to be able to know how to plan, which is really what the secret of the Leopard deep dives into, and that's the conversation we're having today. You want to be able to be sure you know how to manage debt, which is what I believe the secret of the Rhino treats. And then, of course, you also want to be able to, learn the secret of the Buffalo, which is investing. So all of these very basic principles work. I would hazard to say that most people have heard about these things. It's just that we don't take time to sit down and be very thorough and reduce these things to figures. Basically, we do not plan enough. So what level of literacy do you need? I think just having a healthy respect for how money works is a very good start, which is why a person who might not have the highest level of education can be highly financially literate. You may find someone who is doing a very entry-level job, a student even, better at managing money than someone who's a senior manager or an executive in a certain place. And the journey towards financial literacy is really someone just deciding that they want to manage their money better. I feel that it is a decision. Most of the things that need to be done, most people already know. But I think the more you continue to act on the things that you know, the better your life becomes. And so, yes, the level is the higher the level, the better. And it's a continuous journey. For me, that has been the experience as well. I think we all go from strength to strength, from faith to faith, and probably from glory to glory.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Now, I just want to touch a bit on the goals because we've been talking about planning as well. So now, obviously, with planning, you now need to have goals for your plans. Now, how do you have any, or how do you then measure them? Your short-term goals, your medium-term goals, your long-term goals, and then if you're to put them on the smart meter, so to speak, or the smart system, how do they fare when you measure them against that?
Okay, great. So yes, goals are definitely important. Like Terence did say, you need to have a plan. It's important to have a direction that you're going. And I want to believe that, those short, medium, and long-term plans are very important. Now, one question which I suspect may come up very soon in the feed, and let me preempt, is what do we mean when we say short-term? So generally, when we say short-term, under on the money principles, we are saying, anything that's 1 year to about 3. When we speak about medium term, we're looking at 3 to 5 years. And when we speak about the long term, we're looking at 5 years plus. And it's important that you sit down with yourself. And that's not wrong English, right? I literally mean that. You need to sit down with yourself or with significant others and say, okay, what are my goals? What are the things I want to do in the next 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years plus? Whatever it is you want to do, whether it's buying a bicycle or buying a Honda Fit, the national vehicle, or buying a Jaguar or whatever it is you dream about, we'll need to have a time frame and we will need to have a cost. So you you raise the point of things being smart, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time bound. All of those things come together when you develop plans. Normally in the short term, for most people, the first short-term plan you must master under the secret of the leopard is to master a budget, which incidentally is the secret of the elephant. So all of these secrets really mishmash together very well. And beyond that, you also want to have a plan for life. One of the things I've personally experienced in life is that how you manage money and even how you make money completely changes if you have a plan, Patrick. It changes. You see, if you have a plan that's set for what you want to do in the next year, in the next 3 years, in the next 5, and all of those plans come up to, let's say, a total of 20,000. If I get 2,000 in my hand, how I treat that money is different from someone who doesn't have a plan, because I immediately know where that money is going. And I know someone is going to also ask and say, so are we never going to be happy? Because no. Not having a plan is not really a showstopper. I'm sorry, having a plan is not really meant to kill your joy. If anything, I always say that it's also important then to budget for the things that give you joy as you walk towards your ultimate plan. And so after all has been said and done, that plan is a very important guiding document for your life. And it's important that you have those goals for the short term, those goals for the medium term, those goals for the long term. So that means whenever you receive something, you can put something towards those goals, and you can also have a little something on the side to enjoy as you go. It's a journey, and you must enjoy the journey.
Thanks, Kudzai. Wise words from you there to say, sometimes you need to sit down with yourself, and plan. But I also want to add on to that and say sometimes you might also need to sit on yourself, and just reduce your speed towards financial ruin. Just sit on yourself and just control yourself so that you just don't go over the cliff in terms of your spending, whatever else it is going to be taking place with your finances. But just moving on, though, you've got formal and informal institutions that we use to manage our finances. Informal areas for saving, formal areas for saving. How can one navigate between the two? How do you then choose between an informal saving scheme or a formal one? And maybe if you could also just touch on thresholds, perhaps, if you can just give the listeners an advice on what thresholds people might just need in order to get into these different saving schemes.
All right.
Money management.
All right. I would say I'm going to be as broad as possible because I know that people have access to different products and services. And obviously, all of us have different levels of income. One thing I like about living in Zimbabwe is that there's always something for every pocket. And, at every stage, there is a product or a service that you can be able to access. Now, to come to the question in specifics, so informal savings are not bad. So one of the things you'd learn when you talk about savings is that, and I know for women this is a very common one, kuna nonzi nshona around, when you throw money literally at each other, and that's a good thing. And those are yes, nshona nonzi around. I always argue that even money that you use to start a small enterprise, in English, it's called capital, but in Shona, it won't start. So we do have those dynamics in Zimbabwe. Now, informal things are great only if you are able to do them with people you know and trust. So absolutely nothing wrong with what we call, stokvels or investment clubs, as some may prefer to call them if you want to be fancy, because most times they work very well if it's people who know each other and people who have the same objectives. So all of us are wanting to save money to buy a car or to take a child to university. If you have the same goals, then you're in a great place. You'll see that goals will keep coming out in this conversation, whether we like it or not. So for informal, I think it's just important to do this if you realize that you have people you actually know and trust. And this works very well for people who have, I would say, small amounts of money that may not necessarily be accepted in certain formal institutions. And perhaps you also want to have, remember I said at the very beginning, you may want to have money for some things in cash or near cash. Probably easy to withdraw from those types of arrangements because they're informal. It's just texting someone or giving them a call and they'll sort you out within an hour or overnight. But I also recognize that there are different products in the formal services sector. And I think we are living in a very special time now where we have the opportunity of the internet, where you can, all of us, be able to participate. Now, there's a product I'm aware that Old Mutual has, which is called ETFs. And I think this is homework for our listeners to look into, where I'm saying for a person who says, I have a bit of extra money, I have a medium to long-term goal, you could put your money in products of that nature. So instead of answering around everybody's opportunities, I would say, I want to challenge listeners and viewers to make use of the opportunity of the internet and literally Google things that they could use. So every financial services provider does have some products or services that the ordinary person or what we like to call Zimbabweans from all walks of life can access. Just be sure that those places are places where your money is secure, that they are decent brands if it is formal, and if it is informal, it is people that are trusted so that you do not lose your money.
Okay. Great. Now, when we're dealing with the On the Money program, there are different money personalities that are mentioned. For the sake of our viewers, would you mind just zeroing in on particularly the peacock and the ostrich? What's your take on this, and how would you explain that to someone that's hearing about these things for the first time?
Okay, great. Those are my two favorite money personality birds. So you speak of the ostrich, you speak of the peacock. Let's start with the ostrich because that represents a very great and very big constituency, I must say. One thing that people may not know about the ostrich, and I mean, there are lots of things we know about it. It has a long neck, it is very fast. Apparently, its feet are so strong, it can kick a person to death. But what is funny is that for a bird with such strength in its feet and such supposed speed, because it can outrun the average person, apparently when an ostrich is confronted by danger, it has a tendency of burying its head in the sand. And it's interesting to note that there are lots of people who have that character, Patrick. When things are going haywire, money-wise around them, rather than facing them head on, and I'm just doing what the young people do, like eye to eye, they prefer to say, you know what, I don't know, let me just live whichever and put their heads in the sand and pretend that it's not all happening when it's burning all around them. And so that's one signal that perhaps on a financial literacy scale, one still has a bit of work to do. So you want to make sure that if you have been that person who just says, whatever comes, you take your head out of the sand, you begin to be more intentional and deliberate about your life. And like what a leopard does when it hunts, you are very intentional in saying, that is my goal. And these are the steps I will take towards it. You know, when a leopard hunts, it doesn't necessarily always hunt for things that are smaller than it. Some are bigger, right? But the first thing it does is to see the thing it is going towards. Now, if you're an ostrich and your head is in the sand, you need to take your head out of the sand and then deal directly with whatever issues are there, and then you'll be in a great place. Here's the other interesting bird that you raise, Patrick, which is the peacock. Now, most of us who have seen the peacock live will take note that the peacock is showy. And some may argue that because it's pretty to look at, it's justified. But I think the real word that comes to mind is flamboyant. There are also people who are like that. They are like the peacock. They want to show everyone what they're eating, what they're wearing, what they're drinking. And I think in this age of social media, Patrick, we can't even enjoy a meal with friends before we take a picture and show everybody and show the world, put it on the gram, put it on Twitter, put it wherever. And so the disadvantage with people who have the character of the peacock is that they then sometimes end up overextending themselves. And there's a very nice phrase under On the Money we quote where we say, you literally buy things you do not need with money that you do not have to basically impress people who probably might actually not care. Something like that. Again, there are negative traits there that need to be treated. If you find yourself making financial decisions on the basis of what will people think, you want to be seen in a nice jacket like the one that Patrick is wearing or the one that I'm wearing, when really you've borrowed money to buy that thing, and perhaps the next day it might be stolen off the line because you need to wait again, and then you've washed it. Then there's a problem there. And so it's very important that we think and reflect on these two birds and try and avoid these negative traits. Number one, do not ignore if things are not well. The conversation today is simply saying, take pen, take paper, take a device, think about your figures, get your head out of the sand, put everything clear so that you can plan your life better. Number two, if you've been living a life in order to please people, and I always say that peer pressure actually does not end primary school. It goes all the way up until people are grandfathers and grandmothers, Patrick, and they're still showing off their grandchildren. And so we need to be cognizant that we need to live lives that we own, lives that we are happy with, and we would, that in that case, not be like, the peacock, which is flamboyant, but may not necessarily be able to afford the lifestyle that it is showing.
Thank you, Kudzai, for that. Now, viewers, there you have it, the peacock and the ostrich. And you can learn more about these different personalities in the On the Money program. Feel free to get in touch with us and get to know more about the On the Money program. Now, that's financial education, but Kudzai, I want to talk about, the normal education that every child has to go through, your primary education, your high school, university, and the like. How best can people plan for this? Taking it from a parent or a guardian perspective, how can you plan for your kids' education? I know recently now, because of COVID, also, the school terms have changed. Schools are beginning to ask for more money for, the elongated terms, or you can't take term breaks and all these things. Borders have to stay there. So there's a lot that's going on now. So how best can parents plan for the education of their children?
Awesome. I like that question because I'm a parent twice. I have two children. And I want to say the first thing parents want to do, the moment you know that you are expecting a child, all things being equal, 9 months later, the child would arrive in the world. The moment they land, be assured that in the next 3 to 4 years, large amounts of money will be required from you for their education. So let's not act surprised when it's not time to send children to school and fees is being required. I think one of the jokes that was really going around in the beginning of the year when we knew we were not going to go to school was, let's now eat school fees, and how we eat money in Zimbabwe and not spend it. And so planning just never goes away in life. But the beauty with things like education is we know that the average child would start serious school, grade school, at the age of 5 or 6. And then, they would go to high school, all things being equal. And then perhaps they may go for tertiary education. It could be the poly or a university or a college. All of those are many different paths, all of them good, or they may take up a professional course. All of these things will require money. Now, if you know the kind of schools you want to take your child to, it is feasible, and this is what I love, and I say this at the beginning about many things, that you can actually do the math in advance. If the school I would like to take my child to, who is right now 6 months old and just started solids, I can literally plan that I want to take my little daughter to XY school for girls or to such and such a co-ed school. I can literally ask right now how much they charge. I can get that figure in a fee that I am able to save towards, or a currency that I will be able to understand, and I can compute what will be required by way of deposit, by way of fees. And one thing that people should not sleep on is uniform. uniform is deadly. You pay lots of money for uniform. You can compute all of those things up front. And what you should then do if you want to lessen the burden yourself is if that figure comes up to, let's say, for the sake of mathematics, $3,000 is going to be required in 5 years from today. Then we as parents have time. We have time. Let's divide that 3,000 by the next 5 years for this little girl who's just started to eat solids. Let's not then be fancy with certain products and services, half of which children may not even use or like. Let's make sure that we begin to put something every month consistently. Because I'll tell you something about money. Whether it's savings or investing, you will find that consistency is the most important thing. And this is very important when we have plans. We start with the end in mind. This is how much it will require for high school, for primary, for tertiary education. Let's begin to put something away. But let's not just put something away, because saving is a start, right? We separate that money from whatever we are making today, but let's also put it in places where it can begin to grow over time. And compound interest will work in our favor. The sooner you start, the better. So when it comes to education, dear parents who are listening, as long as you are pregnant or expecting, or you have a child who is now in the world, start. Let me even dare say to those that have children who are not, who they didn't plan as well for, but you still have more stages to come, then begin to plan for those things. Don't spend too much now and then have a problem later on.
That's very conscious of myself. Now, Terence said something that you're firing shots at lifestyle entrepreneurs. I think we commented on this when you're talking about the ostrich and the peacock. But then moving on also, when it comes to the setting of goals, and keeping track of them, there are basically about 5 steps that one needs to go through. Namely, first, you need to know your goals. You need to research on your goals. You need to reality check them, then prioritize your goals, and then plan to bring them to life. But in a simple way, how can you best explain how you can use these 5 steps, in actually goal setting? I know I said simple, but just complicated for me. How can you use these 5 steps in goal setting?
Yeah, so I normally pride myself at making tough things simple. Now you're taking my job and forcing me to go reverse jive. But let me give it a shot. I feel like in some of the examples that we've given, we've spoken about these things, but let me speak to those exact 5 aspects, and let's do them in the context of someone who says, because I know Zimbabweans love to drive, okay, who says in the next 3 years or 5 years, in the medium term, I would like to stop walking and I would like to have a vehicle that I own. Now, let's assume that you have, like we said at the beginning, several goals. You have your short-term ones, which most times are treated by a budget. Your daily, your weekly, monthly ones are treated by a budget. We may actually say monthly. There are then goals that are in the medium term. So I may sit here. Let me give an example of myself, because this one I can say. There's an exam I want to write. There's a particular certification I want to have attained by this year in September. And to do that, I need to pay for the certification, right? And then on my other goals, I may want to renew my vehicle because perhaps the one I've had is now giving me problems, or I've had it for very long. And perhaps also I could have a third goal, which is to purchase a laptop. 3 goals, all of them very important, certainly. I've already treated the first thing, which is know your goals. To just ambiguously say, I want to have nice things in life, or I just want a soft life. And I know there's a hashtag around this. And again, yes, I am firing shots. But I want to challenge you, to do well for yourself. And it's not a bad thing to want nice things, Patrick. We're simply saying, plan for them. Don't randomly wake up when it's time to pay fees and say, I now want a new laptop. So how does the child go to school? At what point does, so those things need to be checked against each other. So it's important to know your goals. And for me, nothing beats writing things down, because when you write them down, you can then see and begin to sift what matters in life. And you can have a plan for this year. Like I have a plan. I personally meticulously plan my life. That I'll tell you. Everything is on an Excel sheet, right? And by everything, I'm just saying, what are the things I need to do this year? Perhaps I need to change my handset. I need to get a new laptop. And then perhaps I need to get a new set of tires for my vehicle and pay fees, right? Those are goals I know. So you know them, and then you write them down so that you remember them. This helps because when you're about to misbehave and spend money on some inordinate things, you ask yourself, are these things on the plan? They're not on the plan. So are they my goals? No, they're not. So why am I sending money in the direction of something that's not my goal? So point number one, very important, know your goals. And then related to that, like you said, logically, you want to research them. We did say at the beginning, each of these things has a monetary value. So if I'm going to change my phone, the one I want has a figure. The laptop I want costs a certain amount of money. The school I want to pay for costs, or the certification costs a certain amount of money. So I research, basically, I'm going out and finding figures, but not just that. Specs matter, right? I only use, for the work I do, I only use MS Office, really. Do I need a high-spec laptop that is core? I don't know what the highest is now, but whatever it is that gamers and developers use. No, because if I pay $4,000 for a laptop, I'm not going to derive value from it. Perhaps the laptop I need is an $800 one. And so that's what we mean when we say research your goals. Be very clear. Do you want a laptop? Yes. Which particular brand? What particular specs? Am I writing an exam? That's an easy one. Which specific one? What is the certification? Will I get value from this? You research those things. And that leads us now to reality check. Because knowing is great and researching. Yes, I have a long list of things I want. But in reality, do I see myself getting them this year in a pandemic? To aspire, and I'm a very big Mercedes-Benz fan, but to aspire to the brand new GT something which I saw yesterday in navy blue, and after having, I like it, it's part of my long-term goals, but after having researched that goal, Patrick, the 160,000 United States, right? Right now, the pocket is saying, wonder fit. And so I would then say, I do need a car, but do I, afford the one I think I want? So you reality check. And when you've done that reality check around all of these things, the specific product or the service that you're paying for, and perhaps the timelines that you have, you then come to the issue of prioritizing. So with the exam, I don't have a choice. It's only been written this year, so definitely it's top priority. My laptop still works. I'd love a nice, shiny new one, but it can push for the rest of the year. So perhaps it becomes number 2 after my exam, because the certification can give me money, but maybe not so much the laptop in the short term. And then I think about other things like, the vehicle, school, and you can be able to actually come up with a time check and a money check on what is important. And then you begin now to plan to bring the goals to life. So like I did say, my entire life is planned. And what I've done for myself in this is I know exactly the things I need to do. I'm going to replace my phone. I'll replace my laptop. I will write a certification. And if there was an intention to go for a vacation in Zanzibar, that one would be number 9 out of 10 things. It's a nice to have if I followed money, but it potentially may not happen in that year. So all of these things are things you must do. And perhaps just to tie this up with the secret of the leopard, we did say when the leopard hunts, it sees first, and then it begins to move in the direction of the thing it wants to do, and then it leaps. And those are learnings that you and I can take in planning our lives so that we go in for the goal, we go in for the kill, no matter how big it is.
Thank you for that. I just want to say well done to the owner of the navy blue Mercedes-Benz that has inspired you to put timeline to your goals. I hope they are watching this program and they could just let us know who they are, but well done to them. But, in my comment section here, there's someone that says, managing money is more important than making it. And I think that's very important. There's also another saying that says, a fool and his money are soon parted. Embedded within that is the logic that even fools can make money or have it, but it will take a wise man to actually manage. So thank you for actually posting this in the comment section. Moving on also, I'd just like to think about, that most people can be debt-ridden. Let me say most, but a lot of people have got major financial goals that they want to achieve, right? And one of those is that of financial freedom, where you can be independent financially. But how can people actually go about setting financial goals that will allow them to achieve this freedom?
Okay, that's a really good one. And I like it because we are exactly, checks notes, 3 days away from the country's, 41st, is that correct? As long as I didn't say 42nd, yes. 41. Okay, so I said 41st. 40. I'm great. Yes, independence celebrations. And I've always put this provocative tweet every year, that when we speak about that independence, that's our collective national independence. And if I would say this, because I think Shona illustrates it in a really great way, I will translate. We say we celebrate Kutane Kuchitonga Kuseri. That's national independence. It's for us as collective, for all of the sons and the daughters, gallant sons and daughters of the soil. But you need to then narrow down and ask yourself this question. Are you financially free, right? And that is personal. I always say that personal finance is personal. It really comes down to us as individuals. And I feel that when it comes to financial freedom, the first step is to literally just decide that you want to be financially free, because I feel many people don't make that decision. And if you don't decide, your habits and your actions will not align because you've not decided. And so it's really not a function of how much you presently have. It's a function of how you are going to manage what you do have towards financial freedom. Financial freedom may differ by definition from person to person. For some, financial freedom is saying I can eat what I want, dress how I want, live where I want, which I feel is a goal that many of us have. You want to then say to yourself, especially if you are debt-ridden, if you are in debt, you are literally in a hole. If we ask you to run and someone is on level ground, there's no way you can outrun someone who's on level ground when you are in a hole. You've got to get out of the hole first, then begin to run 100 meters. And so I feel that the very first step anyone must make is to decide that I want to be financially independent. Our independence is the 18th of April. You too can decide on a date to say, listen, I may not be in a good place today, but let me take my head out of the sand and let me say to myself, today is the 15th. By this time next year, all right, by next independence, I want to celebrate two types of independence. One is the national one, and then for me, by that time, I want to be out of debt. You can also equally say, I may not be in debt today, so I'm okay, but by this time next year, I want to have emergency cover of times 6. Or by this time next year, I want to have this much in saving or in investment. Because freedom is the ability to do what you want really, when you want, to navigate as freely as you want. And I know this may mean different things to different people. When I say good food, your definition, Patrick, of good food might differ from mine. But if you're happy with your life and you're able to live within your means and afford the lifestyle that you are living, then you're in a really great place. I feel like I said at the beginning that freedom is a continuous path. And you can define it however you want. And this is what we are discussing today. Start with the end in mind. Say to yourself, I want to be free. By when do I want to be free? And then what are the actions that I must take in order to be free? First, I must cover my hole. If you fall in a hole, rule number 1 is stop digging, right? Get out of the hole and then now begin to do very simple steps. Because with money, and I know that there's really no fancy formula to it. It's consistently doing, small things in the direction of your dreams. Let me say that is my response around freedom. And it is attainable for all of us. It truly is.
Thanks for that. Now, I think earlier in one of the responses that you gave, you spoke about just doing a reality check on yourself. And then here Prosper's mom is saying, when the reality check is too real, you are tempted to invoke YOLO, which means you only live once. I mean, today is mine, tomorrow is not guaranteed. And then people are just get into that mode where, I'm just going to spend today, enjoy myself today because tomorrow is not mine. And that's true. I'm sure maybe in your parting shots, you could probably just address that issue. But we've just got a couple more. Well, let's just one more question to just go through before I give you time to just roll up. You'll find that at times, a lot of people just don't know where to start when it comes to, getting information on how to plan their finances better and, just a pointer on where they can get all this information to better plan their finances and their future. So what advice would you give people? What pointers, where would you direct people to actually go and get such an education or such information from? And be your cue now to actually start talking a lot about what we talk.
Cue received. Roger that. Now, yes, as I begin to draw towards a close, I want to say, first response will be to my Prosper. First, I want to congratulate you for giving a child such a positive name. I mean, if a child is called Prosper, inevitably, the child will just prosper. And if you're my prosper, they keep calling you my prosper, you will also prosper. So my prosper, I really agree with you. I'm not sure at what point you joined the conversation, but one thing I'll always say to people when I take them through financial literacy classes is that balance is a very important thing in life. And you can balance in your budget, because budget is basically saying my income at the very least matches my expenses, right? But within those expenses, budget for joy. So YOLO comes because someone is so strict with themselves to the point of not even buying apple, that whole year because I want to buy a fit. I mean, eating one apple a week will not throw you terribly off. In fact, it's actually great because it will keep the doctor away. Okay, so I find that personally, what has worked for me over the years, and again, I will say kudos to my mom, who, by the way, celebrated her birthday yesterday. She taught me and this is a very simple principle, Patrick. When I started to work, she would say every payday, do your budget, no problem, but buy yourself something nice, right? So something nice, would fit with whatever your income is. So if you earn $100, that something nice could be something that costs $1. For that day, go and buy yourself $1 deal for chips and the Russian sausage, and basically enjoy yourself, because you've worked, you've gotten here, you've worked. Now, it's interesting because you're living in a time when there's lots of talks around vaccines, and I'm not a doctor, but let me just say that the basic principle of how those work is they put in your system a weaker variant of a certain disease so that your body learns how to fight it, so that when it comes, you are in a good place. I feel that the same thing is important when you make sure so if you never but you work and you like ice cream, you will pinch pennies for 6 months, and in the 7th month, you are at risk of using half the salary to buy ice creams. So here's how you should live your life. Balance out your life, but plan for the ice cream. Don't buy ice cream every day. I mean, it has absolutely no health benefit. Perhaps buy yourself a treat once a month or once a week if you can afford it. And that way, you put a small bit of money towards living today, and then the majority towards your goals. So this for me is me building up on my parting shot, Patrick, where I'm just basically saying that it is possible to find balance. And some of these things many of us have learned because we also get information from different people. Now, depending on how many books you read, I highly recommend that people read books. Mine will come out sometime later this year. Read those books, buy books from different places, and then get the good stuff and then take what is applicable. That's source number one of information. Source number two, and I did say this at the beginning, we have not lived in a world as fast as it is today. In fact, the world today is the slowest that it has ever been. Tomorrow it will be even faster. So information is available at your fingertips. Some of you who did not know me before know me now, compliments of the internet. And some people will get to know products, like I said at the beginning, from the internet. Now, let me shield or let me sell a few Old Mutual products because I've used them and I know them. I did speak about how it is very important for you to have savings, to have investments. As long as you have a bit of internet, you can go online. If you just put in, unit trusts, Old Mutual, something comes up. Unit trusts or exchange traded fund, Old Mutual. Those are opportunities that are low-hanging that need, in many cases, and I'll say this for the ETF, depending on who you're using and which platforms you're using, it can be as little as 500 Zimbabwe dollars. That's more than some of us spend, on airtime alone or on lunch in 1 week alone. And so information can be found at literally the tips of your fingertip. Let's start by saying, come to this page. Look at all of the live chats that have passed. Go to the Old Mutual website. Check all the different types of products that are there for every pocket, and you can be in a great place. I always also want to emphasize, use of social media. I mean, it's really up to you how you want to use it. But here's the thing. You can use it both for leisure and also for pleasure and for profit. Follow people on Twitter who talk about reasonable things. I follow lots of people from whom I learn across the world. Go to spaces or groups like WhatsApp groups where people talk about these things. I know for certain that Old Mutual has a live chat literally every week. I've seen some of the people who are speaking there. Some of them I went to school with. Some of them were my past managers. Those people are great with money. and they're doing well in their lives. So learn continuously. Now, I know a lot of things, but I don't know everything, Patrick. However, I do learn from other people. So I make use of the opportunity of the internet. I do follow Old Mutual on Facebook. I follow Old Mutual on Twitter. If there are new products or services, I internalize those. I pick whatever matches my specific life issues. So let me just say this one last thing before you close. I do believe that there are 4 pillars that people need to think about in their own lives. The first one is to say, how best do I manage my life around lifestyle? Okay, live a life that you can afford. That's point number 1. Pillar number 2, which is also equally important, is to think about, okay, what do I do if there are emergencies, when there is death, if there are accidents? For all of those things that are called emergencies, I know that Old Mutual has a product or a service that every one of us can use. In fact, if you literally in a city or a town where there is a cabs, walk into any one of those, because cabs has, Old Mutual has a bank which is called cabs, and just say, I want to speak to a financial advisor. And those guys literally, they do that for free. Do you know how nice it is to show someone your phone and there's a phone number and say, no, I was just speaking to just throw it in a conversation as I was speaking to my financial advisor. Do you know how cool it sounds, to have a financial advisor? And they do this for free. And they can tell you products that suit you according to your level of income and your goals. So for emergencies, make sure that you have products that treat that. And I know that Old Mutual does have a number of those. And then the last 2 things, pillars over and above your lifestyle, your emergencies, is always to think about your retirement, and to think about legacy. What will take care of me in the time to come? What will take care of those I care about if something were to happen to me? There are products again and services for those, which I know Old Mutual has. So go and make inquiries around those things and say, listen, I listened into a live chat. I really want to get my life in order. What guys have for this and that amount of money? And there's a product for literally every pocket.
Thank you so much for that, Kudzai. I think you did a very good job on the request that I actually made to you. Now, I'm also seeing Shalom here has joined us, and she is saying that, enjoy within your means. I think it's also in response to the viewer that spoke about you only live once. And I'm glad you joined, Shalom, because I was with her 2 weeks ago. She's one of the ladies that I was having a chat with 2 weeks ago, and she continues to support the program. But unfortunately, we have come to the end. Our time has run out. It's almost 1,500 hours. And I know the chat could go on. I know you do have a lot to say, but unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up now. And I could have the last words, but if there are final tips that you had planned to give our viewers, I could just give you a minute or 2 just to bring it all in and then summarize it for the viewers, PowerPoints that you just wanted to leave with the viewers that are watching.
Thank you, Patrick. Sadly, everything has to come to an end, but as a parting shot, I would like to say that in line with the secret of the Leopard, which talks about planning our lives and having goals, I want to give you homework. We got it since primary school. Just go and sit down and write down your goals. Have short-term plans, have medium-term plans, have long-term plans. Put figures to those things and begin to treat them one by one. So financial freedom is possible even in this Zimbabwe. But I'm not shy to say personally I'm financially free. I think, Patrick, no one in the chat has said Kudzai owes me money, isn't it? Is it correct? There's nothing fantastic. Not yet, okay. There's nothing sensational I do. I basically just follow the very simple principles of money. And those really start first by having a plan. So please, it's not too late. You've just got into the second quarter of the year. It's never too late to do the right thing. So go ahead, make your plans. Have a short-term, have a medium-term plan, and have a long-term plan. And like I always end by saying, if you do that, it will certainly end in wealth.
Thank you so much. Now I regret having given you the slot to just give us parting shots, because now you have given us homework. And no one likes homework, but you have left us with this task we now have to go through at the end of our episode. That's just not fair. But thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great pleasure chatting with you as usual. I know we constantly interact on these conversations, but it's actually good to be having you on this chat platform here today. And to the viewers that have joined us in today, I'd like to thank you also for taking the time out to actually participate in this conversation. I know a lot of you have been asking questions and posting them on the chat platform. Some of them might not have been directed to Kudzai and directed to Old Mutual, and we're just going to get our team behind these things to actually respond to you individually. But if you do have more questions that you want to ask, don't hesitate. to inbox us on our social media platforms, and we'll get the team behind the scenes to attend to the questions and give you the advice that you need. Like Kudzai said, it's quite cool to be saying that, you're speaking to your financial advisor, and we've got a lot of them. So please do get in touch with them and get the financial advice that you need. But for today, we're going to have to end here up until we meet again the second Thursday from today. I wish you all a happy weekend, because we will be going into it, but more closer home now. Just enjoy the rest of your day today, and see you when we do meet again. Thank you, Kudzai.
Thank you, Patrick. Go ahead and do great things. Cheers.
All right. Thank you so much. Bye.